Do review scores actually matter? I don't know. There's a lot of controversy on Twitter right now, and this gets regurgitated over and over and over again every time we see, one of these games come out that gets a crazy high score or a very low score that surprises a lot of the core audience of gamers. We just saw recently with Saints Row releasing. A lot of people had high hopes for Saints Row, but we knew from the trailers and that sort of thing that there was definitely problems with the game. And of course, once the embargo lifted and reviews started coming out for the game, it was getting really bad reviews, and a lot of people started to slap back against those reviews and almost stick up for what most people are considering to just be a flat out bad game. Now, is it a bad game? Of course, there could be the argument that good and bad doesn't really exist because the whole thing is subjective and it's based on opinion and based on what you like and what you enjoy. But is there such a thing as an objectively bad game? Yes, I think there absolutely is. So, how do review scores really play into this? And I'm not talking about your favorite YouTuber giving his opinion on a game, whether he likes it or doesn't, or whether he or she recommends it or doesn't, but rather these large gaming journalism companies that they feed into sites like Metacritic and that sort of thing, where a game is getting 4 out of 5 stars from GameSpot, or 92% on Metacritic, or 72% on Metacritic, or something like that. How do these things really matter? So many people on Twitter are saying that review scores are just flat out bullshit. They don't matter. They don't mean anything to them as far as their choice or decision whether they're going to buy and enjoy a game that they're completely disconnected from reality for them. However, you've got to realize that gaming Twitter is not the real world. The dedicated fan base that actually anticipates these games coming out versus the random normie who just walks into a Walmart and says, "Hey, a new Saints Row game. I'll check it out." The group of us who actually pay attention to this stuff, who watch YouTube videos and watch the trailers on the company's YouTube channel, and that group of people who discuss this stuff on Twitter and Facebook and highly anticipate these games is a very small microcosm of the fan base. And for those of us who are really tuned into what we think we can expect from a game, sure, maybe those review scores are not necessary and have no effect on things. But you wouldn't believe how much it does affect a lot of the normies, if you will, who maybe haven't heard too much about a game. A game comes out, they check out on something like, what's this Elden Ring I keep hearing about? They Google Elden Ring on their phone and it comes up with Metacritic 92% or whatever Elden Ring's sitting at right now, and they think, holy shit, this must be a really good game, and they go out and buy it. And that's the extent of the research that they do. So these review scores really do have an impact on the market as a whole, and gaming companies strive. We've seen Sony actually come out and, more or less say that they are aiming for high scores with their first party titles, more than high sales. We saw the situation with Days Gone where it sold pretty well, but the review score wasn't really what Sony was looking for. So even though it sold nearly 10 million copies, and maybe only 5 or 6 million of those copies were full price sales or something, but it wasn't a fantastic seller, but that's pretty good. And yet it seems like Sony is never going to make another Days Gone game, or at least not anytime soon, although there is some kind of a TV show in production apparently. So maybe if that does well, they might revisit it or do a remaster or something, try something out at some point. But these review scores really do have an impact not only on the gaming companies, but on the general public at large. So when we look at something like Saints Row that got, a lot of people are saying it's getting like a 4 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10. I think maybe the overall review scores are in the low 60s or something like that. when you look at that, when the average person Googles this game, hey, how's this new Saints Row game looking? And they say, ooh, 61 or whatever it's sitting at. Sorry, I haven't actually looked it up recently. Those people are going to not bother with the game, or they're going to wait until the game is massively on sale, because they're going to say, you know what? It's not worth full price for me right now, but maybe if I can pick it up for $10, I can have a little bit of fun with it. Or maybe they're gonna wait until there's updates, because a lot of people know in this day and age that games launch either broken or just so stripped down and barren. Looking at you, Halo Infinite, games launch so stripped down and barren that within the first year after release, the game is almost like a playable demo in a lot of cases. We're looking at crazy buggy games like Battlefield 2042 that came out last year, and again, Halo Infinite. Cyberpunk 2077 was a complete buggy mess. We look at these games and the review scores really matter. However, those review scores can be very misleading. So we look at something like The Last of Us Part 1 remake, and the review scores for this can be really misleading. Now, generally speaking, when we have a graphical remake, not a sequel, not, a graphical remake of a game, it tends to review slightly lower than the original game, just because this is not fresh material. This is not a brand new, groundbreaking experience. It's just a remake. You might think it looks better, this is a better version of the game, it should score higher, but generally it doesn't. However, we've been getting some crazy reviews for this game, just 10 out of 10s, 5 out of 5s, left, right, and center. And it's funny because a lot of these, when you actually take the time to read these reviews, people are saying, oh, this game is completely unnecessary, looks good and everything, but we didn't need this game. It doesn't add anything to the experience. In fact, it maybe has less content than the original game, but they still give it a 9 out of 10. And it's like, that's a real head scratcher. You're thinking, you thought the game was unnecessary, but it's a 9 out of 10. Like, where's the truth in this statement here? A lot of these review scores are influenced by the manufacturers, who give these influencers free copies of the games, and there's this whole kind of circle in the journalism industry where you have to play nice with these companies in order to stay in the loop and be an industry insider. So a lot of things that maybe shouldn't be 9s out of 10s or 8s out of 10s end up getting those higher review scores, even when people were not all that happy with the game. They may not outright just completely lie, so to speak, but a lot of them are willing to fudge those numbers up a little bit just in order to stay in the good graces with these gaming companies. So to you and I, these review scores mean very little. I am happy when I see a game that I am anticipating. For me, if I look at something like Metacritic and a game has 100 reviews and it averages over an 80, I think, okay, if this is over an 80, it's probably a pretty good experience. It's probably a pretty complete game. It's, not too bad. But that's not always the case. Where do you draw the line? Do you pay any attention to these whatsoever? For me, when I find a game that I am interested in by watching a Nintendo Direct or a Sony State of Play or something, and I see a game that immediately catches my eye from a trailer or some gameplay footage, I immediately start to follow that game in my mind. I start to look for more trailers. I maybe subscribe to the developer's YouTube channel. I go to other discussion YouTube channels like, say, RGT85 or the Spawncast, and listen for more information about that game, information about the development, information about the release date, and eventually when the early reviews from YouTubers come out, I listen to YouTubers that I respect and that I relate to, people whose opinions I have become to know that I can trust, And those types of people, if they recommend a game, I hold that much higher than I would say a random Metacritic score from these corporate reviewers. So I don't know, guys. Let me know down in the comments, what is your opinion? Does 4 out of 5 stars or 5 out of 5 stars or mean anything to you whatsoever? I think it has a much bigger impact on the gaming landscape at large than most of us would like it to. It's unfortunate, but that's really the way the world works in this massive advertising driven world. These review scores can make or break a game. Let me know down in the comments, guys. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll talk to you in the next video.